Stella gazed out the window of her small apartment, watching raindrops trickle down the glass. At 35, she felt her life had stagnated, stuck in a mundane job, no romantic prospects, her dreams of adventure and passion fading with each passing year. With a sigh, she turned away from the dreary view and grabbed her keys. Even on her day off, she couldn't bear to stay cooped up inside. The local coffee shop provided a cozy refuge from the rain. As Stella settled into a worn leather armchair with her latte, the bell above the door chimed. She glanced up, more out of habit than interest. But the man who entered made her do a double take. Tall and broad-shouldered, with tousled dark hair and striking green eyes, he commanded attention without even trying. Stella found herself unable to look away as he ordered his drink. When he turned and caught her staring, she quickly averted her gaze, feeling a flush creep up her neck. To her mortification, he began walking in her direction. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. "Seems to be the only open seat." Stella nodded mutely, cursing her inability to form words. As he sat down, she caught a whiff of his cologne, a warm, spicy scent that made her head spin. "I'm Henry," he said with an easy smile, extending his hand. "Stella," she managed to reply, hoping her palm wasn't too sweaty as she shook his hand. "Nice to meet you, Stella. I'm new in town, just moved here for work. Any recommendations on the best local spots?" And just like that, they fell into conversation. Stella found herself opening up to this handsome stranger in a way she hadn't with anyone in years. There was something about Henry that put her at ease, allowing her usual shyness to melt away. They talked for hours, barely noticing as the rain tapered off and sunshine began streaming through the windows. When Henry glanced at his watch and realized the time, he looked genuinely disappointed. "I hate to cut this short, but I have a work call in 30 minutes, he said apologetically. "Would you maybe want to grab dinner sometime this week? I'd love to continue our chat." Stella's heart leapt. "I'd like that," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. They exchanged numbers, and Henry gave her one last heart-stopping smile before heading out. Stella sat there for several minutes after he left, hardly daring to believe what had just happened. For the first time in ages, she felt a flicker of excitement about the future. Over the next few weeks, Stella and Henry began seeing each other regularly. Their dinner date turned into drinks afterwards, which led to long walks through the city as they talked about everything and nothing. Stella found herself laughing more than she had in years. Henry was funny and kind, with an infectious enthusiasm for life that drew her in. On their 5th date, as they strolled through a moonlit park, Henry reached for her hand. The simple gesture sent tingles up Stella's arm. When he turned to her with a question in his eyes, she nodded almost imperceptibly. Their first kiss was soft and sweet, full of promise. As spring turned to summer, Stella felt as though she was blossoming along with the flowers. Her co-workers commented on her brighter mood and the extra bounce in her step. She began taking more care with her appearance, trading her usual ponytail for loose waves and adding pops of color to her wardrobe. Henry brought out a side of her shed forgotten existed. He encouraged her to pursue her long-dormant passion for photography, gifting her a beautiful vintage camera for her birthday. On weekends, they'd take day trips to nearby towns, Stella snapping photos while Henry patiently posed or scouted interesting locations for her. For Stella's 36th birthday, Henry surprised her with a weekend getaway to a charming bed and breakfast in wine country. As they sat on the porch swing, sipping local wine and watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant hues, Stella felt a sense of contentment she'd never known before. "I love you," Henry murmured, pressing a kiss to her temple. Stella's heart soared. "I love you too," she whispered back. That night, as they made love beneath the stars, Stella marveled at how drastically her life had changed in just a few short months. She'd gone from resigned loneliness to being cherished by this incredible man. As their 1-year anniversary approached, Stella began to feel a sense of unease creeping in. Things with Henry were wonderful, almost too wonderful. She'd never been in a relationship this perfect before. Part of her was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Her fears seemed to be confirmed when Henry began acting strangely. He was distracted and evasive, canceling plans at the last minute with vague excuses. Stella's insecurities flared. Was he growing bored with her? Had he met someone else? Unable to take the uncertainty any longer, Stella confronted Henry one evening. "Is everything okay?" she asked hesitantly. "You've seemed distant lately. If something's wrong, please just tell me." Henry sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry, Stella. I didn't mean to worry you. The truth is, I've been offered a huge promotion at work, but it would mean relocating to our London office for at least 2 years." Stella felt as though the floor had dropped out from under her. "Oh," she said softly, fighting back tears. "When do you leave?" "That's just it," Henry replied, taking her hands in his. "I haven't accepted yet. I wanted to talk to you first. Stella, this past year with you has been the happiest of my life. I don't want to lose what we have, so I was wondering, would you consider coming with me?" Stella's mind reeled. Leave everything behind to move across the ocean? It seemed crazy, and yet the thought of being separated from Henry made her chest ache. I don't know," she stammered. "That's a huge decision. I'd be leaving my job, my friends, my whole life here." Henry nodded understandingly. "I know it's a lot to ask, and I'll respect whatever you decide, but Stella, you are my life now. Wherever you are is home to me." Tears spilled down Stella's cheeks as the magnitude of Henry's words sunk in. This was real, lasting love, the kind she'd always dreamed of but never truly believed she'd find. "Can I have some time to think about it?" she asked. "Of course," Henry replied, pulling her close. "Take all the time you need." Over the next week, Stella's thoughts were consumed by the decision before her. She made pro and con lists, sought advice from friends and family, and spent hours imagining what her life might look like in London. In the end, it came down to one simple truth. She couldn't imagine her future without Henry in it. The thought of staying behind while he moved across the world was unbearable. With shaking hands, Stella dialed Henry's number. When he answered, she took a deep breath and said, "Yes, let's do it. Let's move to London together." Henry's whoop of joy was so loud she had to hold the phone away from her ear. "You've made me the happiest man alive," he exclaimed. "I promise you won't regret this, Stella. We're going to have an amazing adventure together." The next few months were a whirlwind of preparations. Stella gave notice at her job, began the process of selling her apartment, and spent countless hours researching their soon-to-be new home. Through it all, her excitement grew. This was the fresh start she'd been craving for years. The night before their flight to London, Henry took Stella to the coffee shop where they'd first met. As they settled into the same chairs they'd occupied that rainy day, Henry reached across the table and took her hand. "I have something for you," he said, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. Stella's breath caught in her throat. Was this what she thought it was? Henry opened the box to reveal a stunning diamond ring. "Stella," he began, his voice thick with emotion. "This past year has been the best of my life. You've brought so much joy and love into my world. I can imagine spending a single day without you by my side. Will you marry me?" Tears of happiness streamed down Stella's face as she nodded emphatically. "Yes," she managed to choke out. "1,000 times yes." As Henry slipped the ring onto her finger, Stella marveled at how far she'd come. Just over a year ago, she'd been a lonely woman resigned to a life of monotony. Now she was engaged to the love of her life, about to embark on an exciting new chapter abroad. It felt like a dream. Their new life in London was a whirlwind of activity. Between Henry's demanding job and the challenges of settling into a foreign country, they barely had time to catch their breath. But through it all, their love only grew stronger. Stella threw herself into exploring their new home, camera in hand. She started a blog chronicling their adventures, which quickly gained a following. Her photos caught the eye of a local gallery owner who offered her a spot in an upcoming exhibition. As Stella's confidence grew, so did her ambition. With Henry's encouragement, she enrolled in photography classes at a prestigious art school. For the first time in her life, she felt truly fulfilled creatively. Their wedding was a small, intimate affair in a centuries-old chapel. As Stella walked down the aisle towards Henry, resplendent in a vintage-inspired gown, she felt as though her heart might burst with happiness. This was everything she'd ever wanted and more. Life wasn't always perfect, of course. They had their share of arguments and challenges. The stress of Henry's job sometimes put a strain on their relationship. Stella occasionally felt homesick for her friends and family back home. But through it all, their love remained a steady constant. They faced each obstacle as a team, emerging stronger on the other side. Stella never forgot how lucky she was to have found her soulmate that rainy day in the coffee shop. As their second anniversary in London approached, Stella began to feel off. Constant fatigue and nausea plagued her. At first, she chalked it up to stress, but when the symptoms persisted, she made an appointment with her doctor. The news came as a shock. Stella was pregnant. She and Henry had talked about having children someday, but someday had always seemed far off in the future. Now it was suddenly, thrillingly real. When Stella shared the news with Henry that evening, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He swept her into his arms, peppering her face with kisses as tears of joy streamed down both their cheeks. "We're going to be parents," he kept repeating in awe. "I can't believe it." The next 7 months were a blur of doctor's appointments, birthing classes, and nursery preparations. Stella's body changed in ways that alternately fascinated and frustrated her. But Henry was there every step of the way, rubbing her aching feet and indulging her bizarre cravings without complaint. Their daughter, Lily, was born on a crisp autumn morning. As Stella held her newborn for the first time, marveling at her tiny fingers and rosebud lips, she was overwhelmed by a love unlike anything she'd ever known. Henry perched on the edge of the hospital bed, one arm around Stella and the other gently stroking Lily's downy head. "You two are my whole world," he murmured. "I never knew I could be this happy." The first few months of parenthood were exhausting but exhilarating. Stella and Henry took turns with night feedings, stealing tender moments in the nursery rocking chair. They marveled at each of Lily's milestones: her first smile, her first laugh, the way her tiny hand curled around their fingers. As Lily grew, so did their little family's adventures. They took her on picnics in Hyde Park, introduced her to the wonders of the Natural History Museum, and spent weekends exploring quaint countryside villages. Stella's photography business continued to flourish. She found a niche in family portraiture, capturing the same joy and love she felt in her own life. Her images graced the walls of homes throughout London and beyond. When Lily was 3, Henry was offered a promotion that would allow them to return to the States. They were torn. They'd built a wonderful life in London, but the pull of home was strong. In the end, they decided to make the move. It would be good for Lily to be closer to her grandparents and extended family. And Stella was excited to share all she'd learned and experienced with her old friends. Their homecoming was joyous. Stella's parents doted on Lily, and their friends welcomed them back with open arms. But there were adjustments too. The city felt both familiar and strange. Stella missed the charming quirks of London life. Through it all, Henry remained her rock. When she felt overwhelmed, he was there with a hug and words of encouragement. When she doubted herself, he reminded her of all she'd accomplished. As they settled back into life in the States, Stella reflected on the incredible journey of the past 5 years. She'd gone from a woman afraid to take chances to someone who had moved across the world, started a thriving business, and created a beautiful family. None of it would have been possible without Henry. Had believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself. His love had given her the courage to chase her dreams. One evening, as they sat on the porch swing watching Lily play in the yard, Stella turned to Henry with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" he asked, pulling her close. "For everything. For loving me, for pushing me to be the best version of myself, for giving me this amazing life." Henry pressed a tender kiss to her forehead. "You don't have to thank me, my love. You're the one who made it all possible. I'm just grateful to be along for the ride." As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, Stella nestled closer to Henry. She thought back to that lonely woman in the coffee shop all those years ago, never imagining the incredible journey that lay ahead. Life had a funny way of surprising you, she mused. Sometimes the greatest adventures began with something as simple as a shared smile between strangers. Stella didn't know what the future held, but as long as she had Henry and Lily by her side, she was ready for anything. As the years passed, their little family continued to grow and thrive. When Lily was 5, Stella gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl they named Ethan and Emma. Henry was overjoyed to become a father again, and Stella marveled at how her heart seemed to expand to make room for even more love. Juggling 3 young children and 2 busy careers was challenging, but Stella and Henry faced it as a team. They took turns with night feedings and diaper changes, tag-teamed school drop-offs and pickups, and made sure to carve out quality time for each child. Through it all, they never lost sight of nurturing their relationship as a couple. Date nights became a sacred weekly ritual, even if it just meant cuddling on the couch with takeout after the kids were in bed. They left love notes in each other's lunch bags and stole kisses in the kitchen while making breakfast. Small gestures that kept the spark of romance alive amidst the beautiful chaos of family life. As the children grew, so did Stella and Henry's individual passions and careers. Stella's photography business continued to flourish, with her work being featured in prestigious galleries and publications. Henry climbed the corporate ladder, eventually becoming CEO of his company. They made a point of supporting each other's dreams and celebrating every success, no matter how small. When Stella landed her first magazine cover, Henry surprised her with champagne and her favorite meal. When Henry closed a major deal at work, Stella arranged a weekend getaway for just the 2 of them. Their children blossomed into kind, curious individuals with unique personalities. Lily inherited her mother's artistic eye and passion for photography. The twins were as different as night and day. Ethan was studious and reserved, while Emma was outgoing and athletic. Stella and Henry delighted in watching them grow and discover their own paths in life. Of course, it wasn't always smooth sailing. There were arguments and misunderstandings, times when the stress of work and family obligations took their toll. But Stella and Henry had built their relationship on a foundation of trust, respect, and open communication. They knew how to listen to each other, compromise, and work through challenges together. When Lily left for college, Stella found herself struggling with empty nest syndrome. The house felt too quiet without her eldest daughter's laughter and music filling the halls. Henry was there to hold her as she cried, reminding her that this was just the beginning of an exciting new chapter in Lily's life, and in theirs as a couple. To help fill the void, they threw themselves into new hobbies and interests. Henry took up woodworking, crafting beautiful furniture for their home. Stella started a community garden, finding joy in nurturing plants and connecting with neighbors. They took ballroom dancing classes together, laughing at their missteps and reveling in the closeness. As they entered their 50s, Stella and Henry found themselves entering a new phase of life. With the twins in high school and more independent, they suddenly had more free time on their hands. They used it to rediscover themselves as individuals and as a couple. They started traveling more, crossing dream destinations off their bucket list. They hiked the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu, went on safari in Tanzania, and explored the ancient temples of Japan. Each adventure brought them closer together, creating memories they would cherish forever. At home, they hosted regular dinner parties for friends and neighbors. Stella loved experimenting with new recipes, while Henry played sommelier, pairing each course with the perfect wine. Their home became a warm, welcoming gathering place, filled with laughter and good conversation. As they watched their children grow into adults and begin their own journeys, Stella and Henry felt an immense sense of pride and gratitude. Lily pursued her passion for photography, becoming a successful photojournalist whose work took her around the world. Ethan followed in his father's footsteps, excelling in the business world. Emma became a teacher, touching young lives with her enthusiasm and compassion. When grandchildren started arriving, Stella and Henry embraced their new roles with joy. They cherished every moment spent with the little ones, from reading bedtime stories to baking cookies together. Their home was once again filled with the pitter-patter of tiny feet and the sound of children's laughter. As they entered their golden years, Stella and Henry's love for each other only deepened. They faced the challenges of aging together with grace and humor. When Henry's eyesight began to fail, Stella became his eyes, describing the beauty of the world around them in vivid detail. When arthritis made it difficult for Stella to hold her camera steady, Henry researched adaptive equipment to help her continue her passion. They celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary surrounded by family and friends. As they looked around at the faces of their children, grandchildren, and loved ones, Stella and Henry felt overwhelmed with gratitude for the life they had built together. That night, as they slow danced in their living room to the same song they'd danced to at their wedding, Henry pulled Stella close and whispered, "I love you more now than the day I married you." Stella's eyes welled with happy tears as she replied, "And I'll love you even more tomorrow than I do today." As the years continued to pass, Stella and Henry faced the inevitable losses that come with growing older. They mourned the passing of parents and dear friends, leaning on each other for support through the grief. They adapted to changing bodies and minds, finding new ways to stay active and engaged. They volunteered regularly, wanting to give back to their community. Henry mentored young entrepreneurs, while Stella taught photography classes at the local senior center. They found purpose and fulfillment in sharing their knowledge and experiences with others. Even as their physical abilities diminished, their emotional connection remained as strong as ever. They still held hands while watching the sunset from their porch swing. They still shared inside jokes that would send them into fits of giggles. They still looked at each other with the same love and admiration they'd had since that first meeting in the coffee shop all those years ago. When Henry was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 80, Stella became his fierce advocate and unwavering support. She accompanied him to every doctor's appointment, researched treatment options, and made sure he was comfortable and well cared for at home. Through the grueling rounds of chemotherapy and radiation, Henry never lost his sense of humor or his devotion to Stella. Even on his worst days, he made sure to tell her how beautiful she was and how much he loved her. Against the odds, Henry beat the cancer. As he regained his strength, he and Stella decided to make the most of every moment they had left together. They took their grandchildren on a family vacation to Disney World, Henry pushing Stella's wheelchair through the park as they created magical memories with their loved ones. They renewed their vows on their 60th anniversary, surrounded once again by family and friends. This time, their great-grandchildren toddled down the aisle as flower girls and ring bearers. There wasn't a dry eye in the house as Stella and Henry reaffirmed their commitment to each other, their voices shaky with age but strong with emotion. As they entered their 90s, Stella and Henry moved into an assisted living facility. It was a difficult decision, but they knew it was the right one for their safety and well-being. They decorated their apartment with cherished photos and mementos from their life together, making it feel like home. They quickly became beloved fixtures in the community, known for their warmth, wisdom, and enduring love for each other. Younger residents would seek them out for advice on relationships and life, marveling at how in love Stella and Henry still were after all these years. Even as their memories began to fade, their love remained constant. Henry might forget what he had for breakfast, but he never forgot to kiss Stella good morning. Stella might get confused about the date, but she always remembered the little things that made Henry smile. They spent their days reminiscing about their adventures, looking through old photo albums, and simply enjoying each other's company. They still had date nights, now consisting of shared ice cream sundaes in the facility's dining room. They still danced together, swaying gently to the music, even if they couldn't manage more than a few steps. As Henry's health began to decline, Stella rarely left his side. She read to him, held his hand, and reminded him of all the beautiful moments they had shared. Even when he could no longer speak, the love in his eyes when he looked at her said everything. On their 70th wedding anniversary, surrounded by generations of family, Henry squeezed Stella's hand and managed to whisper, "Thank you for the most wonderful life I could have imagined." Stella kissed his forehead gently and replied, "Thank you for being the love of my life, my best friend, and my greatest adventure." A few days later, Henry passed away peacefully in his sleep, Stella curled up beside him. Though her heart was broken, Stella found comfort in knowing that they had lived a life filled with love, laughter, and beautiful memories. In the months that followed, Stella kept Henry's memory alive by sharing stories of their life together with anyone who would listen. She took comfort in the love of her family and the knowledge that she and Henry had created a legacy of love that would live on through generations. Stella lived another 2 years, staying active and engaged in the assisted living community. She passed away quietly one afternoon while napping in her favorite armchair, a photo of Henry clutched to her chest and a peaceful smile on her face. At Stella's memorial service, Lily stood to deliver the eulogy. With tears in her eyes and a trembling voice, she began, "My parents' love story was the stuff of fairy tales, not because it was perfect or without challenges, but because it was real, enduring, and more beautiful than any fiction could imagine. They taught us that true love isn't about grand gestures or perfect moments. It's about choosing each other every day, supporting each other's dreams, and facing life's ups and downs as a team. They showed us that romance doesn't have to fade with time. It can deepen and grow richer with each passing year. They proved that soulmates exist, and that when you find yours, you hold on tight and never let go." Mom and Dad's love story didn't end with their passing. It lives on in the lessons they taught us, in the memories we cherish, and in the love we carry in our hearts. It lives on in every couple who looks at them and thinks, "I want a love like that." It lives on in every grandchild and great-grandchild who will grow up hearing about their incredible legacy of love. As we say goodbye to Mom and celebrate her reunion with Dad, let us also celebrate the extraordinary love they shared. May we all be so blessed to find a love that stands the test of time, that weathers every storm, and that only grows stronger with each passing day. Mom, Dad, thank you for showing us what true love looks like. Your story will inspire generations to come. As Lily finished speaking, a warm breeze rustled through the trees, carrying with it the faint scent of coffee and the echo of laughter. And somewhere, beyond the veil that separates this world from the next, Stella and Henry danced on, their love eternal and their adventure everlasting.